I spent 3 months building the most important report of my career. 3 months of late nights, missed weekends, and quiet determination. And that Tuesday morning, when I finally stood in the executive boardroom to present it, they cut my microphone before my second slide even finished loading. They escorted me out as if I were a temp who'd wandered into the wrong meeting. They thought I'd stay silent. They thought I'd swallow it down like I always had. But this time, I didn't need to raise my voice to be heard. I only needed to prove one thing. That report could not exist without the only person who truly understood it. And at 11:06 p.m. that same night, the CEO called me, begging for my help. My name is Hannah Cole. And I had spent 7 years at Brightwell Consulting watching my work disappear into other people's presentations. That morning in March, standing in the executive boardroom with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle, I genuinely believed things would finally be different. The polished mahogany table reflected the soft glow of recessed lighting. 23 executives sat around it, coffee cups leaving perfect circles on leather portfolios. I connected my laptop to the projector, my hand steady despite the thunder in my chest. I had rehearsed this moment more times than I could count. This was my chance to present the continuity advantage model, a framework that could pull our firm out of an 18-month revenue slide. Good morning, I began, my voice calm, measured. What I'm about to show you represents 3 months of intensive analysis, 47 client interviews, and a completely new approach to how we deliver strategic value. The first slide appeared. Clean. Focused. Undeniable. I watched faces shift from polite attention to real interest. Even Garrett Stone, our deputy executive director, leaned forward. He'd been circling my work for weeks, asking for updates, suggesting collaboration, invitations I'd carefully declined. As you can see from the initial projections, I said, clicking forward. Before the second slide could fully render, Garrett raised his hand. I think we should pause here, he said, his voice slicing through the room. He didn't look at me. He looked directly at our CEO, Michael Rowan. Given the complexity of this topic and our limited time, it might be more efficient for senior leadership to present a high-level overview. We can revisit the tactical elements later. The room shifted. Papers rustled. Eyes suddenly found their way to phones, notebooks, anything except me. This isn't tactical, I said evenly. This is the strategic framework itself. Everything else is built on. Thank you, Hannah, Garrett interrupted, smiling with practiced ease. We appreciate your preliminary work. If you could forward your files to my assistant, we'll make sure they're properly integrated. My hands didn't shake. I watched Michael Rowan nod slowly, already distracted by his phone. A sympathetic glance from finance. Legal avoiding eye contact. Corporate choreography at its finest. Of course, I heard myself say. I closed the presentation. 3 months of 60-hour weeks, calls across 4 time zones, financial models built from scratch when our existing frameworks failed. I disconnected my laptop calmly. As I walked to the door, the click of my heels against marble felt unnaturally loud. Behind me, Garrett's voice warmed, confident now. So, as I was saying about our Q3 initiatives. The door closed softly. Through the frosted glass, I could see shadows moving, hands gesturing. The business of saving the company continued without me. I didn't feel angry. Not yet. What I felt was clarity. This wasn't an accident. This was exactly what Garrett had planned from the moment I refused his 3rd dinner invitation. His 4th mentoring offer. His 5th suggestion that we align visions over drinks. I walked back to my office past cubicles where junior analysts avoided my gaze, past the break room where conversations died the moment I entered. Everyone knew what had happened. In corporate America, public humiliation is rarely spontaneous. They had made one critical mistake, though. They cut me off before I could show the second slide. The one that mapped dependencies. The one that proved the entire model collapsed without the person who understood the interlocking relationships between our West Coast tech clients and our East Coast financial institutions. The person who had spent 2 years building trust with the CEOs of our top accounts. That person was me. Back at my desk, I stared at the wall of awards I'd accumulated over 7 years. Excellence certificates. Client commendations. All leading to this moment of erasure. My hands were calm now. My mind wasn't. Memories surfaced. Morrison Industries, 3 years earlier. A cyber attack had crippled their supply chain. I worked 96 hours straight, mapping vulnerabilities, negotiating emergency contracts with 37 vendors. When the CEO praised Brightwell's brilliant response, Garrett stood on stage accepting applause. My name was buried in an appendix. Then Riverside Healthcare. $200 million at risk. I'd discovered a single line of faulty code misallocating funds for 18 months. I built the forensic trail that saved them. At the celebration dinner, Garrett toasted his team. I wasn't invited. Senior staff only, they said. Every time, the same pattern. My work. Their recognition. My relationships quietly transferred upward. When I finally pushed back, Michael Rowan told me, clients expect senior faces, Hannah. It's not about the work. It's about perception. Your time will come. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. The breaking point came with Meridian Dynamics. I'd spent 2 years cultivating that relationship, flying to Chicago on my own dime when travel budgets were restricted. The Monday before the pitch, Garrett told me the client wanted a more senior presence. During the presentation, the CEO asked, "Where's Hannah? The analyst my daughter keeps mentioning?" Garrett smiled. "She's handling back-end analysis." We lost the deal. That afternoon, HR told me, "You're too valuable where you are." Translation, "You're too useful to promote." I opened my laptop and stared at the folder labeled Strategic Initiatives 2024. Dozens of documents. Models. Presentations. All bearing my fingerprints and metadata. All stripped of my name in final form. But this time was different. The continuity advantage model wasn't just analysis. It was architecture. Financial projections dependent on trust-based client commitments. Technical integrations coded by me, secured with access keys only I possessed. They could steal the slides. They couldn't steal understanding. And in 10 hours, when their Frankenstein presentation collapsed under basic board questions, they would realize it. I opened the project management system and began my quiet revolution. No speeches. No accusations. Just truth. Brightwell's system logged everything. Every file. Every access. Every timestamp. Legal had insisted on it years ago. Now it would serve a new purpose. I uploaded the full model, all 200 pages, appendices included. File names precise. My initials embedded like signatures. Email chains. Client requests. NDAs with my name. Meeting notes Garrett had skipped. Folder structures that told a story without saying a word. This wasn't revenge. It was documentation. And by the time the senior team realized what was happening, the truth would already be permanent. By 4 p.m., the ripples had started. I could see it in the system logs before anyone said a word. Files being opened. Permissions requested. Downloads flagged. Senior leadership, suddenly very interested in understanding the work they'd planned to present without me. I packed my desk slowly, not because I planned to leave, but because 7 years had taught me to always prepare for outcomes no one warned you about. A mug. A framed photo. A cactus that somehow survived fluorescent lighting and corporate neglect. I watered it once more, thinking about roots. How they grow deep and invisible, anchoring everything above. You can transplant the surface all you want, but without the roots, nothing survives. At 6:12 p.m., Maya from finance appeared at my door, her usual composure cracked. "Hannah," she said quietly, "the revenue numbers in Garrett's deck don't match your original model. He's projecting 42 million for Q3. Your documentation shows 37. What's the difference?" I pulled up the file and turned the screen toward her. 5 million depends on maintaining direct relationships with 3 clients, I explained. Harrison Aerospace will only expand if their trusted contact remains involved. That's documented here. Maya went pale. She didn't need me to say my name. The system already had. 20 minutes later, legal arrived. Tom looked like someone who had just discovered a live wire under the floorboards. "We have an issue," he said. "The code underlying this model. The repository shows you as the sole contributor." "That's correct," I replied calmly. "Developed independently, licensed to Brightwell with implementation conditions. And if you're not involved? The license reverts." He didn't sit down. He left almost running. At 7:15 p.m., something changed. Priya Patel, one of our newest board members, stood in my doorway. Former Fortune 500 CEO. Sharp eyes. No wasted words. "Ms. Cole," she said, "I've been reviewing the documentation you uploaded. Tell me why someone with your expertise hasn't been leading strategy here." I met her gaze. "That's a better question for leadership." She smiled slightly. "I spoke with Meridian Dynamics today. They were surprised to learn you weren't at the pitch. Apparently, they asked for you." Then she asked the question that mattered. "Can this model succeed without you?" I chose precision over drama. The documentation explains the framework. Execution requires deep understanding of the technical and relational dependencies. She nodded. "That's what I thought." By 8:30 p.m., Garrett was locked in the CEO's office. Security said voices were raised. My phone buzzed with texts I didn't answer. At 9:05 p.m., Garrett emailed me marked urgent. I archived it unread. At 9:22 p.m., Michael Rowan's assistant requested my presence for an emergency prep session. I declined politely. The documentation should be sufficient. At 9:45 p.m., my assistant texted, "They're panicking." I was already on my way home when an unknown number called. I ignored it until the 4th ring. "Hannah Cole," I answered. "This is David Sterling from the board," the voice said. "We believe you're the architect of the model being presented tomorrow. We'd like to speak with you." The call lasted 43 minutes. I explained the model. The dependencies. The pattern. The risk of erasing the people who actually understood the work. When he asked what my first step would be if I were in charge, I answered honestly. "Put the builders in the room." At 11:06 p.m., Michael Rowan called me himself. No assistant. No filters. "Hannah," he said, voice stripped of polish, "we have a situation. The board has questions we can't answer. I need you to present tomorrow." I let silence do the heavy lifting. "I was removed from the presentation this morning," I reminded him. Publicly. "That was a mistake," he said. "What do you want?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "I want the truth acknowledged. My authorship on record. Direct reporting to the board. Full authority over implementation." He hesitated. I added, "Garrett doesn't present." Another pause. "Send it in writing," I said. "Tonight." The email arrived minutes later. Board copied. Authorship acknowledged. Role defined. The truth, finally documented. The next morning, I stood at the podium in the same boardroom where they'd cut my mic. Garrett sat in the back row, silent. I didn't look at him. "Good morning," I said. "What you're about to see is not just a strategy. It's 2 years of trust, data, and execution." I dismantled the inflated projections. I demonstrated the live model. I explained why relationships mattered more than slides. When Garrett tried to interrupt, I asked him a simple question about the code. Silence answered for him. By the end, the board didn't need to vote. The conclusion was obvious. That afternoon, the announcement went out. I was appointed Chief Strategy and Implementation Officer, reporting directly to the board. Garrett was reassigned. My office moved 40 floors up. But the real change wasn't the title. It was the structure I built next. Attribution became policy. Builders stayed visible. Quiet excellence stopped being invisible. 6 months later, revenue was up. Turnover was down. Analysts who'd been overlooked were leading projects. And Garrett? He left quietly. Sometimes the most powerful voice isn't the loudest. It's the one that refuses to disappear. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Have you ever felt invisible at work, like your contributions didn't count? Share your story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join us for more stories about power, justice, and finding your voice when it matters most.